All right, guys, we're switching gears here because we feel like it's very, very, very important to talk about it, to address it, and I think the common theme for us over the last few weeks of what's happening over in America is opening our ears to listen, right, to some great stories and some movements that are fighting for the greater good. And we got three very special people here to help us learn a little bit more and to give us a bit more insight into Black Lives Matter. Please give it up for Mesbo Q, everybody, Mez and Lulu this morning.
Woohoo!
Thanks for being on the show, guys.
Thank you
Really
so
appreciate
much.
it. Mez, do you want to tell everybody about your part in the march that happened on Monday, just to give everybody a bit of a backstory?
Sure. It's actually crazy because like on the internet it looks like I was the face and the whole organizer of the. Nah, man, I played a very small part, bro.
Nice.
I just literally got the team together.
Wow.
Like I just called my sister and Hugh because I woke up on Sunday after a few days of feeling super heavy. I was like, man, something needs to be done. So I just called them up and said, hey guys, what should we do? After some deliberation, the sisters joined, and 18 hours later we broke the internet.
Wow.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, international and like how does I want to take my time with it because like we really do want to learn, but like the movement, a lot of people saying we're in New Zealand, like we're not connected to what's happening over in America. Like how do you guys see it? How can we tell people, nah, this is not just about that, but it's about a bigger picture? Mesbo, you want to step up, man?
Yeah, so I guess the answer to that is twofold. The first is that, or maybe even threefold. The first is that we have a black community here. We see ourselves on the faces of those victims of police brutality. I think New Zealand, we have a nation to rally around that immigrant group because we are feeling alone and we're feeling in pain and grieved. The second point is we have a duty as people who are benefactors and consumers of Black American culture in so many ways that we don't even realize, to speak over and above the basic humanitarian obligation we have to call out injustice, to call out the injustice happening in Black America. And the third issue is that we have a parallel problem in New Zealand with the militarization of police and its impending sort of destruction on the Māori and Pacifica community. So to say that it's not our issue is quite short-sighted, I think, and I would hope that people consider these things.
Yeah. Lulu, do you find that there is a lot of ignorance around? Like you've been on this journey for a long time, fighting for equal rights and to like encourage, getting rid of racism, right? Like what's your experience with it?
Absolutely. I think it like what's really highlighted at the moment is the police brutality, but that's simply a symptom in like a way larger system. And I know that this is going to sound really radical, but the solution is to actually uproot everything, because anything you plant in contaminated soil is going to be contaminated.
Of course.
Yeah.
You can't be like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs surgery. Do you know what I mean? So it's this larger system that continues to oppress the people, but manifests itself in these really like tangible, visible ways, and that's what we can see and that's what we fight for. But essentially, it's this underlying system of oppression that needs to be uprooted.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, as New Zealanders, we were talking about this the other day, and like one thing I want to be like real honest and real transparent, that like we probably, or myself personally, like I haven't really done my best to probably use the platform the best that I could. And there's one big massive regret that I have about not probably fighting for, our indigenous people here, is I never spoke on Ihu Matao because I was very nervous about it because I really felt uneducated. And it's not, with racism, it's not like one day we're going to wake up and it's gone. Like, can you help people learn on what we can do to be better, to move forward? Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, because
it's like I said in my speech, it takes a lot of soul searching on everyone's behalf, a lot of educating. I myself, my brother tries to push this idea that I'm just championing for justice all the time, but there's still so much that I need to learn, and it's uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? It's not comfortable having to confront these realities, but we've got to put in that work. And if everyone does that on an individual level, that will slowly affect change on a larger scale. But honestly, the most important thing I can stress is just educate yourself. Put your ego aside.
Yeah.
Put your ego aside. Acknowledge it's going to be uncomfortable and do the work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just feel like I don't know if you guys, of course you guys feel it too, but social media is draining.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially if you are a person of color, which I am, having to constantly feel like I justifying my experience. And we both have different experiences, but one and the same. Is there any advice for how to go about that, how to navigate that space so that you feel safe, that you don't always get drained and trying to explain this all the time and it's triggering, and you know what I mean? How do we go about that conversation better for people online?
3 words, bro. Protect your energy. In my opinion, right, like she said, it takes a certain level of accountability and responsibility on every individual to really be about it. On the internet, like this morning, for example, I had to call Masboo and be like, yo, bruh, calm me down. Because there was this dude that was literally like, give me one example of an institution that's racist.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
Let me give you a list.
yeah, I was like, let's do the opposite list. That'll be easier. The ones that aren't. You know, it blew my mind, bro. And but one thing I've understood is everyone is at their own level of evolution, bro. Everyone's at their own level of consciousness, man. And there will be those who either know and don't want to admit, and there's those who simply don't know any better. The ones that don't know better, we can eventually convert.
Yeah.
Right? But the ones that are really about it and want it the way because their white fragility is afraid that equality means black supremacy.
Yeah.
We can't help that, man. But to waste our energy arguing with people online is not the way. See, sorry.
Yeah, well, just...
Step on up.
Hi, just speaking to that, I think often what happens as well when you are educated and you have been doing the work and you have been unpacking this, and it feels like you're doing that in an echo chamber a lot of the time because, yeah, like I'm speaking to the converted, obviously. It's the people who aren't having these conversations because of that level of uncomfortability that I think there's just a real, what's the word I'm looking for? There's just a refusal, I think, of sitting in uncomfortability and really sitting there and actually going, this is a place to learn. This is a space to learn. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel confronted by whatever privilege it is that you happen to have. And using that privilege to actually highlight the bigger problem. I can just speak from, I'm not black, I'm a mixed race. And just talking from my own lens, I think it's really important that we have each other's back and that people do need people. So actually really taking on that allyship is really, really important, and that we can't just leave it up to black people or queer people or trans women or whomever that struggle looks like. We can't just leave it up to them to always be doing the work. We have to be willing to roll our sleeves up and do the work as well.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, can I
jump
really
in.
want to feed into that. I saw this really powerful hashtag on Israel Adesanya's Instagram, and he said, educate, don't humiliate. And that fully changed my whole perspective towards this thing because I realized I was so, when someone says something, I'd be like, in public, I'd say, this dude's an absolute idiot.
Yeah.
It's words like that that push people further away from wanting to learn. If we can have the intention to educate people at the same time, we're not here to baby anyone. Like if you refuse to accept how reality is, we detach. However, I think it's just really important. I think if love and compassion and a want to educate people is at the forefront of every word you speak, I think we can find progress.
Do you?
I was just going to ask sort of for maybe someone like me, and there's a lot of New Zealanders like me that although I'm of Māori heritage, like I don't look it. And I'm very aware of my sort of lighter skin privilege or whatever that may be. Like, what's the best way, and maybe even just for other Pākehā New Zealanders and stuff, what's the best way we can use that privilege to help this movement? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, like my sister Lulu said, it takes a lot of introspection from every individual. And often what we're looking for is the use of that privilege in everyday situations. So everyone has family members, everyone has friends who has certain opinions and who likes to articulate those opinions in unhelpful manners. And it's very tempting to stay silent in those situations because it would be awkward to speak up. It's these things that we need to change. So for the people who are looking to who don't know exactly how to contribute to this movement, who feel like they're too much of a small drop in a big ocean. It actually does matter to us every time we see you challenge your friends. We see you challenge your family, and we see you challenge your community, because we are watching. Like the brother Miz just said, like, it is draining to do this online. Like, sometimes we just sit back, and sometimes when all these opinions come in, we want to detach, but there's pain in that detachment. Like, it's not just a detachment and we're okay with it. There's a lot of pain and there's a lot of grieving in the fact that we can't actually do this ourselves, or that we have to rehash our trauma in order to have these conversations. So it's of heightened importance that that people with these privileges do speak up, and preeminently, like, to the people around them. I think, yeah.
Cool.
And can I just say something?
Yeah,
Because
course.
this is probably the one thing that I feel most passionate about, is the fact that you just have to acknowledge it for what it is. You know, actually call it out and say, hey Shalane, hey Lulu, hey Mazbaku, hey Miz, I noticed what's going on in America. I know you're black. Are you okay? How can we support you? Because all I've heard over this last week is, oh, I just didn't want to offend you. I didn't know what to say. And
Which is counterproductive, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
because it's not acknowledging, and it's putting your humanity aside, because that situation is going to make you feel uncomfortable. You know, your humanity all of a sudden is contingent on whether you're willing to become uncomfortable or not. And that's not okay, and that's where it all starts.
It's crazy that you bring that up too, because you know, for a lot of Pacific Islanders, and I can't speak on behalf of Māori or any other nationality, but for a lot of Pacific Islanders, like, we're told to kind of stay quiet, like
Humble.
it's that humbleness. And I know that there are some, you know, loud folk out there, but it's like, I don't know, like, maybe that was my own personal experience, but you're always told, just be humble, be quiet, just do you, stay out of trouble.
Yeah, just to talk to that, I think we get stuck in respectability politics, which is really unhelpful, because it's all a bit messed up, right? So if we all are too worried that we're going to upset someone, you should be upset. The whole situation is incredibly upsetting to me, and it always amazes me that people just want to be like, I'm just worried that people won't like me. That's okay. I'd rather be unliked and have integrity and do the right thing than be quiet and do nothing.
I think that people need to hear that 100%.
Yeah, I've seen it in our community. It's always made me feel some type of way. Like, we're so, especially around Pacific, even Māori, so keen. We're so compliant with at home that it actually helps. It is really toxic for us in other spaces. You know, so we'll say yes, all of that, and then other spaces where we need to actually stand up and have a voice, we don't have it, because there's been no. That just doesn't work like that. So I'm glad you addressed that. It's so good.
With the Black Lives Movement that is obviously happening in America right now, and off the back of the death of, you know, George Floyd, what, like, I know we need it to get better, but like, what does the government need to do in order to actually acknowledge it? I know that sounds real ignorant, but like, what?
No, it's not.
Yeah, what does that look like in the eyes of someone who is of African American descent? You know, like, what's the change that needs to happen? Because, you know, there's a lot of people going, oh, they got rid of slavery, now it's like against the law to be racism, you know, like that sort of stuff. And
They got rid of chains, not slavery.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You want to hear the answer that no one actually really wants to hear?
Yeah, go.
Abolish police. But that's way too radical.
That's but that's.
But there's slow, gradual changes that can be made. If a white man is on film murdering a black man and doesn't get indicted, or does get indicted but gets acquitted, or does get sentenced but it's a slap on the wrist, what's to stop other white men from doing the same thing? Do you know what I mean? Like, now, yesterday the news broke that the 3 other white men were going to be arrested, or the 3 other men that were involved, and the main guy that was actually kneed him on the neck, his charge has gone to 2nd-degree murder. That's great. That's really great. But, like, what's to say that it's not going to happen again? Do you know what I mean? Like, the whole thing of prison. I did this paper in uni called Sociology of Crime, I think it was called. And there's 4 reasons for why we have prison. It's retribution, it's rehabilitation, it's I don't know the proper word for it, but it's to stop other people from doing it, like deterrence. And there's one last one that I can't remember because it's way too early and I haven't had enough sleep. But
You're good.
you know what I mean? Like to stop deterrence, to stop other people. Make an example out of these people. Like while we address the systemic issues that actually lead to cops being able to do this in the first place, like that's a long process. But in the meantime, make an example. Like America burned down before they decided to arrest those people. Do you know what I mean? That should not have to happen. It should have been, it was on film. Imagine what's not happening on film.
And I like that you said that because I think people, maybe from an outside perspective as far as government goes, they think it's as simple of just bringing in a democratic, like a government apart from a Republican one. But at the end of the day, if someone like Joe Biden comes in, it's still a white guy that doesn't know the experience and doesn't fully understand it. It is like
he
a whole
understands
system.
it. He's all about it.
Yeah, but it's like you're right. Like
Business.
abolishing police, like it's actually so much more than just who's in government. Like there's so much more going on. I think. Yeah.
Can I just I just want to ask this. I have no knowledge on it, but I've been watching social media for a long time, and especially over the last week, there's sort of been this thing dawn on me, like so much information. We see it so much. Are we being destigmatized slowly to desensitized?
Sorry, he makes up his own words sometimes.
I haven't had much sleep either. Are we being desensitized to
Murder porn.
it's you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
how we've seen how many people being beaten and even killed on camera now. At the same time, I think this feels different. This feels like what we're seeing now. There's a movement happening, which we're all being a part of. But does that exist? Is there anything?
I personally, 100%. However, if the desensitization comes with a certain level of awareness as well, because like as much as it sucks to see all these horrible things and it messes up our day, bro, they have to live there.
Yeah.
Like these people have to like the same. You know what's crazy is like it's literally just human rights violations, bro. Like with the videos I'm seeing and the things that I'm seeing, I don't even know why lawyers and international law and the UN aren't doing anything about it, because it's literally the same stuff Hitler did, bro. It's the same stuff Joseph Stalin did, bro. There's no difference. And it's crazy that the global community of diplomats and lawyers and people who, you know, lead our countries and our world are doing nothing. And that's why I think now we're in an era of no more, it's not about politicians anymore. It's genuinely about leaders, bro.
Yeah.
And just off the back of that also, like 2016, Philando Castile's video, then the very next day, Alton Sterling. I watched those, and 2016 officially went down as the worst year of my life. And like, it was the worst on my mental health. Do you know what I mean? So as a black person, seeing someone who looks like you, who looks like your father, being killed.
Yeah, you good. Breathe it up.
The effects that has on your mental health it's not good. It's not healthy. And on top of that, these videos being shared, like I get it, it raises awareness. I really get that. But the family of George Floyd now know that the entire world has seen the sacred last moments of this man's life. Do you know what I mean? And I posted something on my Instagram where it's like black people are so demonized to the point where people have to see bloodshed to acknowledge our plight. It should not have to get to that point. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I get that on you. Like from what you said, it's not healthy to be taking in this much trauma. The way it manifests itself, like I'm a black girl in New Zealand who probably never will ever have to face that reality, but that pain, that trauma is still very, very real. And I can't imagine what it's like for someone who's a lot closer to my black friends in America who are probably going to have police encounters. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really, really unhealthy.
Yeah.
I'll just add one thing to that. There's a lot of talk about the concept of desensitization, but it needs to be stressed that there are entire populations of people that were never sensitized in the first place. Desensitization is a uniquely Western phenomenon. Us who are black immigrants here, like we are continuing to this day to find out the extent to which our parents have either suffered themselves or witnessed suffering. They did not have the luxury of being sensitized. People in, certain parts of the world are hardened because they have not had that luxury. So, we need to contextualize that concept of desensitization, I think.
Super important.
Yeah, and I think just talking about that one step further again is talking to what you're talking about in terms of consuming these videos, I have a performance background, and I've been doing a lot of research around just trauma in general. And what happens when we watch trauma and we consume that media is that our brain doesn't actually know that our bodies aren't going through trauma. So what happens is it recreates the trauma in ourselves, then recreating trauma in the people who are consuming that. And so I do think it is actually really important that when these videos are popping up on our social media feeds, to actually not share them, because the trauma that we're recreating in other people, what is the purpose of recreating that trauma? And I think a step further from that again is that our role as allies is to make sure that we are checking in on our people who really are experiencing these things and holding space for them in a meaningful way. And it can't just be lip service. Like, it is important that we share these things on social media and we use our platforms, but I would say actually you need to do the emotional labor too. Ring your friend, check in on them, make sure they're okay. Whatever that might look like, it looks different to everyone. And I think that's the other thing just around safety. There is no homogenized version of safety. Safety looks different to everyone. So just actually taking the time to ask your friends, what does safety look like to you? How can I create a safe space for you so you feel protected?
Yeah.
Sorry, I really need to feed into that. As an advocate of like breathwork and meditation and spiritual, mental and physical well-being, one thing I've realized is even just us growing up as human beings, we experience so much trauma and pain. People and experiences damage us, and a lot of us suppress that. Okay, we're all walking around,
100%.
living our busy lives. Yep, I'm great, man, partying, woohoo, Instagram looks great. But inside, we're all actually in turmoil, bro. And I'll say all of us. You know, even those that seem like they're all zen, they got work to do, bro.
Yeah.
So what's crazy is seeing these interactions between humans who have not faced the inner reality, who are now living in a world, if we can see the earth as a body, is facing itself and doing the inner. So if you can see earth as a human, it's doing the inner work and healing, which is really chaotic and lots of conflict. And we're just projecting all our suppressed trauma on each other.
Yeah.
Like no one's actually talking to listen and understand compassionately because there's so much inner neglect. And we're trying to fix a world out here without fixing ourselves first. So it takes us back to that whole, if you want to change the world, you need to change yourself. That's more real than ever, man.
Yeah.
We need to work on ourselves, bro. Otherwise, we're doing more damage.
Well, what's your guys' feedback on like the hashtags that have started, the social posts and the platforms and spreading the message, even if it's coming from a good place? Is that okay? Like, are we just off the back of the social media chat that you said before and not sharing stuff?
That's actually a really good question.
Where actually a lot of people are actually sharing stuff, and not necessarily like, the violence or any of that, but messages of support.
That's actually a really good question because Blackout Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So it's yes.
I felt something in my spirit over there,
Yeah.
like in my intuition, and I just didn't. But I didn't feel to like put anyone down who was.
Of
I was
course.
Just like, I just need to like be quiet about this, but I just observe. And
Yeah.
then, like,
So what I realized was this, man. I first made a status being like, don't be sheep and et cetera, again, attacking more so than empathetic and compassionate, right?
Yeah.
And my music manager, who's a white Kiwi male, and his girlfriend, who are white Kiwi, like, blue-eyed, green, they called me and were really like, yo, man, what do we do, bro? Because, like, we're trying to help and raise awareness, but everything we do is attacked.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, oh, damn, there are actually people who are genuinely wanting to be a part of the conversation to help, and we are damaging that help. We're pushing them further away by being so attacking. So I fully deleted that post and I went again. And it was for those doing Blackout Tuesday. Thank you so much for wanting to raise awareness. The intention is so pure and I love that. However, keep in mind, if you hashtag Black Lives Matter on a black post, what we're doing is censoring the internet from the content we need to see. So the appropriate hashtag is Blackout Tuesday.
Yeah.
Education over humiliation. This comes
But
back to
even-
compassion.
Even on that, did you post your black screen and then what did you do? Like,
Oh,
is
yeah.
it performative? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Are you actually
yeah.
like doing the hard yards? Are you working on yourself? Are you calling out your friends and family? Or is it, and because now, especially with George Floyd's thing, there's been this whole thing of like, we see your silence. We've been calling people out. So it's like, oh my God, I don't want them to call me out on my silence. Let me post this black screen. Boom, done. Enough activism for today. Is that what it is? Or like, are you actually doing more than just that?
Yeah, yeah.
Also at an institutional level, because there are a lot of businesses who were championing that.
Talk on that.
And I saw a very interesting tweet on Twitter. And I'm sorry I can't credit the person because I don't remember your tag, but it was like, okay, it's good that I've seen this black square. Now let's have a look at your executive board. Let's have a look at your management board. The thing is, activism has been going on decades, centuries before social media, and it will continue going on after social media. There are people doing really hard work, organizing, protesting, rallying, doing everything they can that don't pay attention to social media. From my perspective, when I see a black square, I just scroll past. I don't feel anything towards that because my thing is like, I will see the evidence. I'll see the fruit of all this stuff later down the line. Or I have seen the fruit already. And I already know that you're about it or I know that you're not about it. So I'm neutral when it comes to that because my issue is like my sister said, what are you doing? What have you done? And what are you going to continue to do?
Yeah.
Sorry, just on top of that as well. Actually, never mind, bro. Continue.
I was
saying so much. I wanted to
just say step up to the mic, but yeah.
Yeah, I think just talking to that, there needs to be a redistribution of power and these spaces be more inclusive, but like actively be more inclusive. Have you got women? Have you got queer people? Have you got people with disabilities? Like this conversation is intersectional and I just think we're just at the tipping point of going enough now.
Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah.
Like actually, it's all well and fine for you to say this, this and this, but it is kind of lip service if you're not actually going to start to dismantle those power structures.
Yes. Yeah.
What's a little ironic is I guarantee not even white people are happy with the system that we're in. You know what I mean? So it feels like there's so much labor being done that they can't see on their behalf.
Some white people.
Yeah.
And I
I'm
suppose,
not generalizing, it's very hard.
yeah, and just to talk to that, Jordan, I think it's a really elementary entry point to say that when we talk about white privilege, no one is saying, white people, you haven't got it hard.
Yes,
Do you know what I mean? Like we get that. Well, it's not about that. Like I understand that there's poverty that exists within white communities, and that's a conversation that we need to have further. What people are saying is that your white privilege is that you are not having the same kind of struggles as people of colour because of your skin colour. That the system that has been designed and built has been built from a colonial, capitalist, patriarchal framework that benefits you. So it's not about, you know, we don't see your struggle. Like, of course you have struggle. But it's not because of the colour of your skin.
Yes.
It's a more nuanced conversation than that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I need to get on this as well.
No, this is good.
So that really nicely segues into a point that I'd really love to make because I think a lot of people still have the conception of racism as an individual characteristic or a singular action that one might take. For example, just saying, I hate you because you're black. Whenever me and this team and a lot of people who are speaking on these issues refer to racism, that is not what we're referring to. And I want to try and illustrate this with a point. If you, as an individual, say to me, like, I don't like you because you're black, I actually don't care. When I start caring is the fact that you might be my manager. You might be the police commissioner. You might be the CEO. You might be a lawyer. You might be a judge. You're probably, you know, one of those things, and all your friends are probably those things. That's when we start to care, right? So when we talk about racism, we don't talk about singular actions. We don't talk about attitudes. We talk about a system which empowers a kind of people, right? And these people can get away with having these attitudes without accountability. That creates a whole lot of things. I don't need to go into the whole 4 centuries of what it's created, but it has created, you know what? It has created a whole lot of things, and that has systemically disadvantaged some people. So it needs to be stressed. This conversation that we're having now is on the backdrop of that understanding of racism. It's so much deeper than than just an individual thing. And unless people are willing to understand that, we're not really going to get anywhere.
Yeah. No, that's very good. That's very, very well put and very easy to understand. Like, I love that. So we were caught in like a bit of like I was kind of felt it the most because people were coming at me about Blackout Tuesday and about our role within that, because we play a lot of hip hop and R&B music. You know,
we get paid off.
Yeah, we get paid off black culture, like we do.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about it, because on kind of why we stayed on air and probably didn't shut shop like everybody else did in America who was leveraging off that. We're at a stage in New Zealand where we're not at the extreme point of what the people of color are going through in America right now. So staying on air, what's your thoughts on us using this as an educational platform so we never get to that point? Like having you on, using the platform to talk, to educate, for us to listen, and not shutting shop and people misunderstanding it, but actually using the platform and keeping it live so then we can educate New Zealand. What's your thoughts on that?
Yes, we are at the preventative stage of where America is at.
Yeah.
We don't have police militarized and killing our people, right? Part of that education process is non-suppression of truth.
Okay.
For example, we've recorded a lot of content today, right? Every bit of it is truth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know who's in charge of what's aired, but I personally would rather every part of this interview was aired so that people can understand over a long time, sprinkled in sections, than trying to bunch it into a segment and losing a lot of truth. That's part of the educate. It's us admitting that this is not just a one-day conversation in a segment for your radio show on a day. It is about a constant dialogue that we must be having. And you're going to get it wrong, bro.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to mess up, and so am I.
Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah.
It's okay. But the fact that we're trying and getting it wrong is part of that healthy reawakening process.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to say two things. I'll address that first. So, yeah, it is important for people who want to start this work to understand that they're going to get it wrong, and to understand that people that are affected by these issues are hurt, and they're not going to co-sign what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? When you begin along this journey, the first steps that you take towards anti-racist work are going to look a certain way to certain people, and you just have to accept that. Because as I said before, it's about what you're doing in the long term. What you're doing now is cool. What are you going to be doing in 5 years when this is in a conversation? What are you going to, not even 5 years, what are you going to be doing in a week or 2 weeks? You know what I'm saying? So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is this idea of being the first and the loudest. So whenever there's, and I'm sorry, guys, I love you, but I need to say this. Whenever there is a black culture win, you guys are the first and loudest to talk about it. Whenever there's music that comes out, or someone, you know, there's some news, there's some, you know, saucy things or whatever within black culture, you guys are first and loudest. We love that, but we need you to be first and loudest in, you know, in these conversations as well. And historically, that hasn't been the case. And that, I'm not coming at you guys like to attack you, but like, I'm actually saying that like we are grieved. Like the black artists that have been on my, like you guys have played my music before. When I observed the sound, I was grieved. I was hurt. You know, I was like, wow. So, and a lot of people have come to me and said, like, not just you guys, but a lot of other blogs and stations have come and said, you know, what can we do? I'm saying, be first and be loudest. Just as you are about black music, about fashion, about everything else, be first and loudest about injustice. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think it was like a really hard sort of like conversation for us to begin to navigate, because we were sitting here going like, we are leveraging off black culture. That's how we got to thank our jobs for that. But we felt like, I think I'm speaking for myself here, not speaking on behalf of the boys, but it didn't feel like my conversation to navigate, so I kind of shied away from it. But I understand now that we as My FM, and because there's not a lot of other platforms and radio stations around New Zealand that are going to do that, we actually have a responsibility to be a voice for you guys, especially because we leverage off your culture, but because we do represent our Māori, our Pacific community, and that's what we stand for, and we need to stand for everyone that feels underrepresented, I feel.
Absolutely, and you're right, and thank you for even just saying that.
Yeah.
But I just also want to say, man, I understand that this is a business as well.
Yeah.
And if I probably looked at who owns the business, I doubt they look like me. Yeah.
Or us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my point. I look like you, bro. Like, that's what I mean. I doubt they look like us, right?
Well, that was
and
the
so
crazy thing.
what I'm trying to say is this, bro. If I had to lose my job today because I had to address an issue to do with racism at my work, I'm happy to lose my job. And we all have to be, bro. Because if this comfort of this income and this status is worth allowing the system to continue doing what it's doing, because, bro, they can't continue business without the people.
Yeah.
They cannot make sales without the people. There's no purchases. There's nothing happening if there's no people, bro. We have more power than we think we do. As a spirit and as a soul, at your essence, we're powerful beings, right? We can manifest thoughts into reality and change our reality. But not only that, bro, but we have power with our purchasing decisions, where we put our money.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, like, and again, it's not about going to your boss and saying, if it's just, hey, man, this is how I feel. Cool, you listen the first time. Hey, second time. Eventually you get to the point of being like, yo, bro, I can't represent you if you don't represent me. Bro.
Yeah.
It was funny. Nixon called me while I was at the protest, and he was willing to. That's when you were looking at what Ebro was doing, and he was like, we'll shut it down. And I said, no, let's go to work, but the way we do it is we continue the conversation, and we don't shy away, and we speak scared. Like I had fear in my voice last week, because I'm also aware that sometimes what we say adds noise to the conversation that doesn't need to be said. And what voices do we elevate that are the right voices? And we got that timing wrong last week. So it wasn't something that we were neglecting, but historically, maybe we could have done things better. I know Nate spoke on Himato, and he's very strong too. But I think talking afraid is really important too. You know, because as people of culture, we all feel it in this room as well. But I think what I'm getting out of this is that I just feel, I don't even know how to say my words. I feel a connectedness.
Yeah.
Which is what I wanted to get out of this. And please continue to hold us accountable in this space.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's something we want to get better at.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's really important.
Also adding on to that, as a people with a platform here, I don't know how much agency you guys have in deciding what gets played, but supporting local black artists. My friends alone, without even getting into the wider scene, I have so many friends that are fire. We like Mai's the first to play like the American artists, and that's great. That's really cool. But we have local black artists here that are grinding but don't get given a platform. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know how much, like I said, I don't know how much agency you guys have, but that could be a conversation to be had with people higher up. Like you said, elevating those voices, because man, these people, like, first of all, New Zealand in general as a music scene has so much potential.
Yeah.
But then the black people in New Zealand get overlooked. My DMs are broken from African Americans like, yo, there's black people in New Zealand? Like, these people that just really don't even know that we're here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Imagine if we could reach those people and like elevate those voices. And then it's all about like creating opportunities for these folk. Like I have him. I can name you like off top like 10 black fire artists that I know that probably have never been played on my.
Yeah.
And that's one way you guys can use your platform to amplify those voices.
Just talking to what Jordan was talking about and to echo some of that, I think there's always been this idea, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, of being told we just need a seat at the table. Once we have a seat at the table, then we'll be able to change the table. The problem is, A, the table is rotten. It's like, just we need to get rid of that table altogether. And B, if you are still, and I've been hammering this home for a long time, and I'm sure people are sick of me saying this, but if you are still the only one voice at the table that is not white and male, then
Stale.
Pale and stale, just putting it out there, then I said what I said, okay? I think what change are you actually going to have? So there's real power in just building new tables and building alternative ecosystems that work outside of that mainstream system that we all have to move through, which I think we're currently doing. So, F your table. I'm going to keep building my own table with people like this.
And sometimes you're like so hungry to sit on that table that once you eat, you forget it. Like, and that's a conversation I'm trying to continually have with myself. Like, now that I'm in certain spaces, you know, like, I got to remember, you know, and And that's why it's really important you guys came here.
Yeah.
That's why we had
Yeah.
no questions today.
We really just wanted to listen,
Yeah.
like, and learn. And also, like you said, we've talked for 40 minutes, and a lot has been said. And I want to promise you that we won't edit it, other than your awkward stepping up to the mic transitions. But
you don't have to play it all at once.
nah,
either.
yeah, and I
Scatter
think
it
you're
out,
right.
it's
We
fine.
should scatter it out. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is a conversation that needs to continue, and we want to be on that journey with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, utmost respect for that, man. First
Yeah.
ones to do it here.
Yeah.
Straight up, I really appreciate that. But I also wanted to say to the listeners, to you younger people, this isn't about who's loudest on social media. The real mahi is in real life. Like, when you see an injustice, just as a human being, you have a duty to say something. If that means you get arrested or killed, if you live forever and you stood for nothing, you ain't nothing, bro. Like, you have to stand for something, you know? Like, as a human being, I don't care if you're white, black, green, yellow. Like, if a dude's got a knee on your neck and you're asking for, bro, I'm getting arrested or killed that day. You know what I mean? And that's a really dangerous thing to say. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about disrespect to authority here. Respect to authority, but within means. If authority is abusing power, as a human being, we must do something.
Yeah.
Not violence always, but bro, how hard is it to speak up? You know, and that's where white privilege sometimes comes in handy.
Yeah.
Because if you're in America, what I've seen the trends now is like, I mean, don't get me, bro, during the riots, everybody can get it. Like, everybody's been getting it. Like, black, white, everyone's been getting it, bro, which is super heavy. But a lot of the times,
Everyone's been looting.
yeah, and that's what's crazy, bro. See, look, what we need to understand is during a revolution, because this is what this is, right? All the old systems are failing. They failed. They've been failing since day dot. But now everyone's aware of it. So there's going to be this massive, again, man, I speak for myself when I say this because I'm a hippie, bro, but there's a love revolution happening right now, bro. Okay? The love will reign on earth. I can guarantee you that. But during that process, what we need to understand is we must stand together, bro. Because if we're united, you guys saw what happened on Monday. That's what happens. You know, but people from BBC, CNN, J. Cole shared a post, Black Eyed Peas, Lil Duval, like Chris Brown, like, bro, everybody on the planet, I've got friends all over the world, are hitting me up being, bro, everyone in our city is talking about the moment of New Zealand, bro. We echo differently. That's because everywhere else, it's either not genuine, right, or there's no true unity. Here we actually are united, but sometimes we forget that when we're in these echo chambers, as she says, of division. So if we can, so I think that's my real purpose with that protest was genuinely to just remind people, because I had cousins and African people in this community who were like, bro, police don't care about us, Maoris don't care about us, white people don't.
You guys are Ihimata.
Yeah, and they're like, they don't care about us, we stand for them. No, so I was like, bro, this could be a dangerous mentality for my people to be out of society in, because if they do something stupid to an islander, this is race war again. You know what I mean? So I was like, yo, we got to remind everybody of something. So I called these dudes up, and man, we broke the internet, bro.
Yeah.
And that's what unity and love does. It's felt through the internet too.
Yeah.
I just also had a quick point to make.
Yeah.
I wanted to address it earlier when you brought up the issue of how it can be hard to being exposed to these images constantly. And there's this quote that everyone's posting on Twitter and whatever saying it's a privilege to have to learn about racism instead of experiencing it. And I posted this photo of my Instagram of my friend's little sister, who I believe is like 6, holding up a Black Lives Matter sign. And thought about how on Monday, on Queen's birthday long weekend, a lot of little white kids or little white teenagers were at Sylvia Park getting new kicks. But my little sisters and my little cousins and my little brothers were on the street protesting. Do you know what I mean? Like, black kids don't have the privilege of having to be mature before having that conversation. They experience these things from young. My little brother, when he was leaving the house on Monday, put on like a balaclava because he's real into like this drill stuff. But also like the mask thing as well, you know. And my little sister, who's 10, was like, are you leaving the house like that? And he's like, yeah. She's like, don't. Like, if the cops see you, they might. A 10-year-old her innocence is already lost. Do you know what I mean? Like,
That's really
little
sad.
black kids don't have the privilege of preserving their innocence. There's that video going viral of like maybe a 5-year-old in America. The most like I cried when I saw her face. Like, no justice, no peace, her face. And I'm like, it's insane to think that white people don't want to have the conversation with their kids because they're like, oh, no, like, they're too young to learn about this. Let's preserve their innocence. 4 5-year-old black kids don't get that.
Yeah. Just because there has been a lot said today, like, can you leave us with, like, just some, like, touch points on what we talked about today on how, one, we can join the movement and do our best to listen and learn, like, just some key points, Lulu, of, like, what what we can do, like starting now. Yeah.
I don't know if there's anyone that wants to add to this.
Or just
answer.
anybody, if you got anything, I think some key points of just, what we can start doing like this second. Yeah.
And educate yourself. Use your privilege to help. There's people, I gave this one lady like my bank account details because she wanted to support us with like supplies and stuff. And I didn't even check my account. We just ended up buying all that stuff out of pocket. And I've checked and we've got damn near $500 in donations. That's all going to be going towards this cause. But there's people that, if you have the means to do something, do something. Educate yourself, educate your family. Be willing to lose friends if that's what it's going to take. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather have 2 people that value me and all of me and my blackness and me being a woman and all of that than 10 superficial friendships. Do you know what I mean? Like, be willing to take the risks. If you've got privilege, leverage that privilege for the good of those that don't necessarily have it. Put in the work, educate yourself, speak out. Like, it's a lot that you can do, but start there.
It actually all just also boils down to one thing, which is just be brave. Like, that's why we called out the media. That's why we called out the government, because we want you to be brave. We want you to actually stand up and go, man, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to open that conversation. So that's all I can reiterate is all of that thing, all of that education, all of that learning, but it takes absolute bravery to stand up and acknowledge that you failed.
And something I need to emphasize is, like, when we say education, we do not mean hit up your black friend, especially those of us who have just come off of this protest, who are fielding interview requests by international bodies. Do not go up to them and ask them, what can I do? There's this thing called Google that we use on the regular that we, for some reason, forget exists when issues like this, black authors have been writing about this issue. You know, the crazy thing about listening to videos of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, and all those guys from the 60s and 70s is that they're having the exact same conversations as we are right now. So there are so many resources out there to look at and to educate yourself. And it needs to be stressed that the basic understanding of racism that I talked about before needs to be completely comprehended in order to move forward. If that is not understood, if for example, you cannot make the distinction between a non-racist and an anti-racist, then you're not ready, to contribute to these organizations. You're not ready to start speaking up, because we're not even sure if you're talking about the same thing we're talking about. So
100.
there are books here, and we can guys give you links. There are books from authors. There are websites. There are resources. Please educate and understand this before you even start approaching us and asking what you can do.
My side of things, do the inner work on your mental health, your emotional health, and your spiritual health. Because if you can learn to, a lot of people can't be alone in a room with themselves for a certain amount of time without going on this, or, to spend time alone, breathing deep into your diaphragm and just being in the presence of the Holy Spirit, to genuinely just allow yourself to go back through your trauma and heal, cry it out, laugh it out. Because if we do not do the inner work, guys, it will not manifest out here. Otherwise, we're all just running around for the sake of perception. Do the inner work, guys. Talk about your feelings, men. Speak up. Talk to each other. We're losing too many of our people here. Because look, in America, what's happening is happening, and we stand in solidarity. Right here, even as a African individual, I am privileged. I'm so privileged. I don't have cops chasing. I'm privileged. I feel white sometimes. Seriously, not on God, bro. Like, when I really look at my life, I feel white sometimes, and I feel like it's really important to take advantage of that privilege and spend time with yourself, breathing, getting to know yourself, forgiving yourself and forgiving others. Because if you can start to get into that space of self-healing, then when you talk to someone and they project all that anger at you, it's not sparking you up and creating more chaos. You can sit there, hold space for them with compassion, and listen to them without catching feels about it. And if we can learn to do that, man, I think the real work starts inside yourself, man.
Yeah, my last little parting kōrero would be that you are what you eat, So just being mindful of what it is that you're consuming and diversifying that. Because I think what I have seen from the mainstream kind of highlighting of the Black Lives Matter movement, and I have to say this, is that it's always about men. And we're missing the bigger picture that actually the people who are the most left behind, the most forgotten, the most invisible are trans black women. So we need to start getting better at protecting trans black women, listening to black women, holding space for black women in a way that we currently aren't seeing, because these are the women who are always the backbone of these movements. It's always women-led, but these are not the voices that are being highlighted. So I just think it's really important that when you are educating yourself and you're reading and you're watching videos, don't just read and listen to men. Like, there's so many black women who are making phenomenal content and having these really big conversations that they don't get airtime in the same way that men do. It's just a fact. So I think, you are what you eat, and just diversify what you're eating.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, thank you so much, guys, for coming in. And like we said before, we promise to do our best to use this platform to make sure that we are celebrating and acknowledging and making sure we're giving the platform to every element towards, getting rid of racism and making sure that we're doing our part.
Yeah, and also I just also want to just say thank you for doing what you did last Monday. And I want to also acknowledge, just because you can do it doesn't mean that it's easy. And all that you've had to take on in the last week, taking everything on, but to also give those who came that moment to hopefully transition change within themselves, within their own spaces, within their communities, within their workplaces. We can never measure that, but I know that there is, for those who left that protest, and I did, you never know what you start. And so thank you for being sparks, to light. It was really important. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.